you are welcome along to a surprise episode of the Huddle Breakdown Extra Time Thursday episode. This is horribly disappointing. You're stuck with me again hosting, Alan. What the hell happened? There's rumors that Martin did his ACL, that there's extreme technology problems, technical difficulties. I don't know if Celtic TV has taken over Martin's setup. What is going on, Alan?
I don't know. I think his laptop's torn its metaphorical ACL by the sounds of it. But the good news is, thanks to the wonders of technology, hopefully we'll be back up and running next week.
Yes, we hope so. And it was not to lack of effort. So we miss you, Martin. We'll have you back next week, obviously. And we spent a good hour trying to get things sorted, and it didn't work. So we got to get this thing out. So. Here we are. So you're stuck with me. So obviously the 800-pound gorilla in the room to discuss. We'll go over the glorious victory from yesterday, as of this recording on what is today? Wednesday, and then we're going to look forward to today is Thursday, isn't it? Jesus, holy crap, Alan, I'm flustered. And then. And then we're going to look forward to the Falkirk game on the weekend, and we've got a treat for everybody. We're going to be speaking with John McInally from the Falkirk Daft podcast. We spoke to him for about a half hour, and it was really great. So stay tuned in for that. That segment will come up then in a little bit. So first, Alan, let's talk about it, man. I mean, this was glorious. What could you have imagined it have gone as well as it did?
No, but whatever I may think might have happened, I'm so looking forward to your contrarianism. I've been looking forward to it all day as to why it's actually a crock of shit. But no, listen, let's get a few things out of the way first, right? They were really, really bad, right? I mean, like really bad. I mean, they're the lowest ranked team in the tournament. We thought they'd be technically very good. We thought they'd be well organised, well coached, difficult to break down, etc. They were really bad. Let's say that. And there was an element of, as I watched the game in real time, I was like really nervous that we hadn't got that second goal. And then even at 3-1, come on, be honest. You were thinking, this is going to finish 3-3, isn't it? It's like, so all that, right?
I won't deny that thought crossed my mind at least once. Yes,
all that. But listen. Let's get that all out of the way. And listen, there will be, in the nature of this show, this isn't a happy clappy, blow smoke up anyone's ass, podcast. There were a few little bits and pieces that we should cover for sure, but. All that now on the table is we have lost to far worse teams than this over the years, mainly thanks to LOL Ball. And what do I mean by that is we've gone into European, especially in qualifiers, mainly qualifiers, not so much in the actual Champions League proper, although, Martin O'Neill could barely win an away game in the Champions League, couldn't buy a win. The nightmare of Aalborg, the nightmare of 10 men Anderlecht, all those things, So, and we've had obviously, knockout horrors against Copenhagen. I'm going to start depressing myself, but most of the nightmares against teams that are worse than what we played last night have been in qualifiers where, the chief executive decided that, we didn't need a team ready to play in those qualifiers and that he knew better and how to get better deals on the last day of the transfer window. So we went into these July matches and August matches massively underprepared.
With Wrexham's centre back starting next to Nir Baton.
Yeah, Nir Baton and some kid just dragged out of the...
Ewan O'Connell, I think. I think he plays for Wrexham now, or he did at one point.
Dean Murray or Owen O'Connell or something like that. Nightmare, right? But this was different, okay? So, we've those days are gone. Rodgers declared before the game that this is the best prepared he's ever been for a Champions League campaign at Celtic. And that spoke volumes for exactly what I've just said. He wouldn't call it low ball, he wouldn't do that, but that's essentially what he meant, I think. And so we were well prepared, and we talked about the level of cohesion, the level of consistency that the team has been playing with this season, how even players that we worried about, like Taylor, Scales, have risen up to a level because of the cohesion and the strength of the collective. And so we were hopeful, but obviously you don't know until the battle starts. That first punch is thrown, how exactly it's going to go, and like you said, it couldn't really have gone much better. To be honest with you, um, I would have been quite content with any sort of win, and then we take the 3 points and we move on. That kind of thing. To actually put to bed a really poor side and to do it in that style, to look that confident, to see players like Engels, really blossoming in for a 20-year-old in that, and the signings. It's almost as if you invest in the team, you actually improve the team and you might get some better outcomes. But we seem so nervous about doing that. I'm not saying this justifies spending 11 million on Engels. By the way, that's we need a lot more data for that. But as a first night, as a confidence booster, as a almost clearing away some of the horrible memories of playing teams like this, the Clujis and the Michelins and the Maribors and the Malmos and all that. It really did get swept away on an absolutely raucous night at Celtic Park, and that is what we should remember, and we'll pick the bones out of it. Listen, because that's what we do, and there'll be a few things that we'll mention that were, that were problematic, of course, but that is important, I think, in terms of it's another milestone in terms of another example of the cohesion, the consistency. The team played, and especially without the ball, the team played exactly as I imagine Rodgers wanted them to play. So very, very gratifying.
Yeah, the word I thought of in trying to characterize it was comprehensive. I mean, there really wasn't a phase of the game or play where we weren't dominant. I mean, not even, normally, as we
Well, there
talked
was
about, the
to be very pedantic. There was 3 minutes when they scored their goal and the build up to it when they were quite good, and that was
yeah,
it. That was literally it.
yeah, yeah, and on balance, though, right? So that part of it, like their ability to transition, to be cohesive in linking play and creating an attacking sequence. Uh, if it wasn't from like a dopey mistake, which happens, right? So the two prior to that, the chances that they had, one was Liam Scales diving in that opened up the entire right side, and fortunately their winger made a dumb decision and didn't pass the ball to a wide open Vice coming down the left. And then the other one was, you know, Carter Vickers a little sloppy, I would say. More understandable, but a little sloppy. And they're guy who's pretty technical and talented, not the most athletic, but brought the ball down and made a nice pass. Unfortunately, again, horrible decision by Vice not to shoot the ball when he has a wide open pathway to 1v1. But yeah, outside of that, like there was nothing that they were able to do in a non-mistake aspect of play to progress the ball at all. Really, I mean, they were completely overwhelmed physically, and we were hunting in packs like we do. And you take all of the energy and the adrenaline that comes with the event. I mean, it was just I thought they were completely overwhelmed. And yeah, so that when I say comprehensive, like that, there's no nuance about whether a midfield was won or lost in a certain aspect of the phase of play, even physical. Like there was nothing that they beat us at. I think, again, this comes back to the more of the nuance, the context, that when you get that dominant of a performance, usually you're talking about like a crazy disparity in resources, like Man City playing mid-table Icelandic team in some kind of weird game that for whatever reason that matchup would happen, or a manager sets up their team stupidly, and or the team's off their head for some reason. They're out drinking until 4 a.m. the night before or something. So I think a lot of it had to do with how poorly Vice set them up. I mean, it was, we talked about going into the game that kind of hoped that they would think that we weren't as good as we are in certain ways and think they could go more toe to toe. And I think that's how he started. And as the game progressed, we forced them into playing a little deeper, but they were not narrow. They were not deep. They were not compact. Like all the things that we talked about that I was worried about that they might replicate relative to the Hearts game, the aspects that Hearts gave us some problems. They were none of those things. And they had a 37-year-old center back, and they had a 37-year-old defensive midfielder, only played two in midfield. So they weren't compact, had two guys in midfield, basically, one of them a 37-year-old, and they were running around like headless chickens at points. I mean, it just, to a degree, with how well we're coached, how well we're operating right now, I mean, it was like shooting fish in a barrel in many respects. So that's how you get this kind of dominance. I mean, we just completely dominated them with a couple of these moments, as you rightly put out, where we had some vulnerability. But the other thing is, just by definition, when we look at things like the OBV and other things, like every game's going to have some people that have some negative things happen. Everybody, like almost everything was positive. Like there was no one had a bad game from a value perspective. There's certain aspects of play, a bad foul here or there, those kind of things, yes. But generally speaking, it was just completely dominant. We talked about on on Tuesday about the odds and how it was basically us, Real Madrid, and Bayern Munich as the most extreme odds, and the game kind of played out that way. So give the bookies a compliment on on making the odds on that game. So yeah, it's just overwhelming and comprehensive.
Yeah, and listen, having that's all true from a logical bookmaker's perspective, but those players haven't won many Champions League games, and certainly not in that dominant
100%.
fashion. And many of them will even have memories of some of the games that I mentioned earlier. So, especially the sort of McGregors and the Forrests and Ralstons and so forth. So, we're not just here to blow smoke. It's like, why did Celtic win? And listen, you can't just look at Celtic's performance. You have to look at the other team, as James alluded to. The Hearts game was a good precursor because, again, it was this sort of middle block that they played, 4-4-2. But it wasn't much of anything. It wasn't compact. There was the spacing wasn't right. They hardly pressed. But this is a really old side. As James said, 37-year-olds in two of the key defensive positions. Apart from the striker, who's 23, most of the players are either over 30 or just about 30. Apart from, I think, maybe the goalkeeper, who's like 26. So this was a really old side, and they badly lacked energy. And really, where I think Celtic won it was actually off the ball, without the ball. And I think so. Rodgers has spoken a lot this season about pressing, and it's something which we do talk about a lot, but I still think it gets a little bit misunderstood. So again, we're not talking about running around chasing after people all the time. Pressing is a skill that depends on teamwork and decision-making, collective decision-making. Well, that means it's actually a really difficult discipline. It requires a lot of training on the training ground to get right. But it's the feature of Celtic's play that Rodgers most often references. He wants Celtic to be the best they can be off the ball, because you don't need to have, skills that would get you signed by Man City on the ball. To be able to press properly, right? You can actually, if you get people who are good pressers, like Dyson Maeda, an absolutely terrific presser of the ball, never going to play at that level because on the ball technically simply isn't good enough. But, in Champions League games, especially in the next 4 games where Celtic probably won't have the majority of the ball, they're going to have to press very intelligently. And it's actually using pressing as a creative tool, i.e. to create chances, to create turnovers in areas of the pitch that the opposition don't want to turn the ball over. So when you looked at this game, even though Celtic had 61% of the ball, they had 143 pressures compared to only 110, I think, by Slovan. So I was going to try and possession adjust that in terms of what would that number be if it was like 50-50. But essentially, Celtic were overwhelmingly pressing Slovan. Slovan were very rarely. They started off quite well. So when Celtic were pinned back in maybe the right back position or the left back position, they would actually press quite well, and they got a couple of good moments from that. But generally speaking, they fell back into this very passive sort of mid block. And Celtic's pressing, again, it's quality, not quantity. So just counting up the numbers won't tell you the story. I think Daizan Maeda, as you might expect, had the most pressures, and Engels was not far behind him. But again, you have to dig into that. So where I think we're going to see, we talked about Matt O'Reilly. Matt O'Reilly used to rival Maeda for volume of pressing, but not necessarily quality, because he just lacks that slight bit of pace. Engels may not be massively quick, but he's athletic in the sense he covers the ground quickly, and he's young and he's tenacious. So his press duration was something like, total 14.5 seconds, whereas I think Daizan Maeda's for 20 presses was something like 10.5 seconds. Right? So by percentage, that's a big difference. So what does that mean? It means that when Engels pressed the ball, he didn't just press you and then you shifted it. He kept pressing you. He kept at it, right? His anticipation, his ability to change direction, as opposed to, for example, Nicholas Kuhn. Nicholas Kuhn presses very aggressively, and he's really quick. But once you get the ball past him, he's not recovering because he's already 5 yards the other side of the ball. Engels is different. He anticipates well. So it's the quality of the pressing. And it's that press quality, I think, that was the huge difference between the teams. And I said to you before we came on air, James, when I watched the game, I was expecting the turnover data to be something along the lines of they gave the ball, they turned it over like 30 times, we turned it over 5, and it was nothing like that. It was actually something like they turned it over 19 times, we turned it over 14 times. When I say turnover, I'm talking about these pack turnovers where you lose possession and your teammates are out of the game. We had some bad moments, and when I say bad moments, I mean we lost the ball in areas that if we were playing a really good side, we would have been in big trouble, and they just did not have the quality to trouble us. So again, I come back to there's always things to improve, right? If we turn over the ball to Dortmund, Atalanta in those same positions to the same volume, we're going to be in big trouble. They couldn't lay a glove on us, and we actually were able to press them into a lot of mistakes. And we'll press good teams into mistakes as well, by the way, because we're a good pressing team. That's a powerful weapon, and it's one way you can reduce the gap in wage bill. Like if we were playing Man City and we pressed that well, I'm not saying we'd win the game, but we would give them some problems. We would create difficulty for them because of the quality of our press. So that's the thing. I think that it was the one feature of the game I would say that I would want to call out. It's the one thing which is quite egalitarian. It requires a good coach, and it requires intelligent, cooperative players who read the game well and respond well. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best footballers, doesn't necessarily mean the most expensive players. But you put those two things together at this level, if you can do that, you have got a fighting chance of creating difficulties. The slight downside, as I say, is we did give the ball away a lot. Now, 4 of those turnovers were Carter Vickers. Now, that is exceptional. I mean, that is like a one-off. I've never seen him have so many bad moments in a game as he did the other night. And he went off after 80 minutes, and I'm almost wondering, maybe did he have a virus? Did he have the flu? Was he not well? Because it was so unusual to see him turn the ball over. I mean, Hatate had 3, Kuhn had 3. We expect that. That's kind of normal for those players. But Carter Vickers 4. That was really, really, really surprising. So we'll wait to see on that. We'll talk a little bit about the Falkirk game and who might play. I wouldn't be surprised now if Carter Vickers is maybe given the weekend off, whether there's some underlying issue there that they're managing, whether it's illness or fitness, I don't know. But very unusual. Don't want to dwell on that too much. Celtic pressing was excellent and in stark contrast to theirs, and I think that was the key feature of the game.
So the cross sport analogy, I'm gonna use American football. And can I tell you, I'm shocked. I think that the Red Zone channel has has been a phased transition in fandom in the UK. So I'm always shocked at the number of people that I commiserate with on Twitter that are in Scotland and England that actually know what they're talking about with the NFL. But one of the big challenges that quarterbacks have when they progress from elite college programs into the NFL. And we see that right now with, it's gotten very common for teams to draft quarterbacks aggressively early in the first round and then play them right away. Used to be they would have, like Dan Marino, one of the great quarterbacks of all time, sat for his first year for the most part. Most quarterbacks had got drafted and then they would kind of get, bedded in, so to speak, for a year on the bench because the pace of the game is so different. And when you're playing in Alabama in a spread offense against kind of the equivalent of a mid-table SEC team, you just got extra space, and the defenders aren't quite as quick. And so when you're throwing passes, you're not shooting a nickel from 400 yards where you need a scope type of thing. Like you've got a margin of error that's bigger. And I think that's the reason why I'm using that is it would have been hard for our guys not to look good in many capacities against the way that they were set up with all of the space that was there. I mean, it was like, an NFL quarterback playing against, a crappy college team that has defensive backs and linebackers that aren't that fast, right? So our guys were well coached, have a great plan, more athletic than their players to a significant degree. It appeared to me anyway, in quickness and in speed. So they just, they were like chasing us around, and we have all this space. So the margin for error there was so big that even if it's not the perfectly placed pass, it's not going to erupt into something terrible like an interception in the NFL or a turnover in our case. That this is I was hoping from an analytical perspective, again, not as a fan, I was quite pleased with the way it went as a supporter, and very much enjoy the game. But from a kind of stress testing our squad and the way that we're playing, I still don't think we got the test from that perspective, meaning that we were so luxuriously enabled as far as how to pass between the lines, and Kyogo dropping into like 20 yards of space. There's no one even near him. I remember some early in the first half, Hatate coming over into the right half space in an overload and just no one around them. That kind of thing. Even on the set pieces, I mean, there was the corner that Angle played to I forget who I was. I think it was Taylor made a run into the box. And he was, it ended up in a free header from Maeda with six guys around him, none of which marked him. But it was, a nice play off the training pitch. But in acres of space, like it's crazy that both those guys had 5 to 10 yards of space available to them. So from a stress testing perspective, I think that's, again, this issue with us turning the ball over, I thought we're going to get tested against Dortmund. We're going to get tested against Atalanta. And even Club Bruges when we play them. I mean, Bruges, there's no way Bruges is going to be this bad. Forget about the talent levels that'll be different, but they're going to be better organized and better prepared to present challenges for our players on the ball. The other thing I'm going to say, and I think we'll get into some of the individual performers, is, and this is just a statistic, and I mentioned this to you before we went live, because again, I was shocked at the difference. Is that I was looking at kind of actions, defensive actions and engagements. Cause just when I looked at the broader report, as far as the game statistically, I kind of couldn't believe the disparity between us and Slovan. So to contextualize that, I went back to that Hearts game. And so if you just look at like defensive duels, again, this is back to the issue of not looking at precision, we're looking at accuracy here. So neighborhood type stuff. They had 43 defensive duels, Slovan, against us in the game. That was 50% lower than what Hearts had against us on the weekend. Right. So what does that mean? This goes back to this passivity and how they were set up, and you could almost excuse that, so to speak, if they were playing in like a tight Christmas tree formation, and like we were almost daring them to come out of their narrow, compact shape, but they weren't. So it just, that, I think that statistic distills this down to the degree with which we just dominated them, and how they set up being so kind of ridiculous almost. Um, so let's move on. And again, the last thing I'll say before we move on is, like, the dominance was reflected in the underlying statistics. Like, this when I say comprehensive, like it was across the board. Like it was just completely overwhelming in that regard. Not dissimilar to the sequencing different, the details different, but Bayern Munich's 9-2 win over Zagreb. It was like Zagreb, yeah, it was Zagreb. Similar neighborhood of like just complete overwhelming dominance. Well, let's get into some of the individual performances then. So who were some of the in a class of students that were all getting A's? Who had the A pluses?
So I'll start off. I mean, I generally, I would say more than half the time have a different view on my man of the match versus what gets dished out in the stadium. And I can't remember who got the stadium one, but so I think Liam Scales got the official UEFA man of the match, which is, I can't argue in terms of it was well deserved. He was terrific. I mean, absolutely was terrific in terms of he was very clean in all his defending. That moment that you talked about in the very early in the first half, I think was the only blemish where he was right out on the touchline. And actually, I think he actually intercepted a pass. It's just that it got away from him. And then they broke behind him very quickly. I think it was a little bit unlucky. I wouldn't classify that as an individual error so much. I just think he wasn't. Maybe his control could have been better. Maybe he could have been quicker. But I think that would have been harsh. Otherwise, I think he was clean throughout the game. He had the most packed passes. He scored a goal, obviously, which is fantastic. I think he had another header in the second half as well. So highest sort of packing score for passing and all that. So didn't have any real strong issues with Scales. And listen, it's important in terms of his development as well. We kind of saw this under Ange with Starfelt, where we're kind of throwing our hands up the first 6 months of watching Starfelt, and then in season 2, he really did start to form a great partnership, and the unit became more cohesive, and everything just looked a lot tighter. And so it is with Scales. I mean, last season there were many loose moments in most games, and this season far less, actually, to be fair to him, and for him to play so well at this level. I think, but on the back of what has been a string of good performances all season, I think is really heartening for him. So that's excellent. But for me, when I look at a game like this, where you're attacking and you're dominant, because the XG was actually pretty. Suddenly, the different vendors, I look at Opta Stats Bomb, and then I've got my own, and they were all actually really similar. We were around about 3.5, they were around about half. So +3 XG in a Champions League game is fantastic. If you recall, I said last season, once teams get about 2.5 XG ahead of you, anything can happen. That's when the likes of Bayern Munich score 9, right?
Right.
Because their attack is that good. Now, we don't have an attack as good as Bayern Munich, so we scored 5 off of 4.3 post shot XG, including a penalty, right? So we didn't do a Bayern Munich. We didn't do like a Man City and score 7 off of 3 XG or something like that. And that's I'm not damning with faint praise. This is progress, right? But I'm just putting it into context of the competition. If that had been Bayern Munich playing them last night, it would have been 9-1 probably. but we're not. But listen, we know we're not Bayern Munich, like so. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that when you're dominant like that, and when you're thinking about the man of the match and individual performances, I tend to think, well, unless you're under a lot of pressure, and we weren't, and although Scales had a great game, we didn't have to do a ton of defending, and therefore I'm thinking, who made the biggest contribution to us winning the game? Yeah, and for me, the player this season who again is on a massive upward trajectory is Nicholas Kuhn. He again had a game where, as well as one assist, and my goodness, he went down the outside. He went down the outside
and used his right foot
and banged it across with his right foot. We want to see more of that young man. So that was excellent. Loved that. I've not checked on his season data, but that was another 4 chances he created yesterday. He must be his chances per game must be ridiculous this season, because I think it was 5 or 4 or 5 on the weekend as well. And he's also weighing in with sort of secondary assisting passes as well. Nobody gets in the box as much as he does. That's another feature. Now, that might sound like a bit of a yeah, but it's what you do with it when you're there. And we know that he makes bad decisions sometimes. He gets into shooting positions, then he stops. He meanders across the box, and nothing much happens. But you put defenses under a lot of pressure by running into the box. As soon as you step into that box, especially with the speed he's got, you create a lot of doubt and uncertainty in defenders' minds. So he had the highest expected assists of the game, 1.12. He set up a goal. Although he didn't have any shots, he was he also got on the ball a lot. I think the combinations between him and Johnson and now Engels, who's clearly a very intelligent footballer, those three are going to be, once they get in tune with each other, I think are going to be awesome down that right hand side. So for me, that game breaking assist, the fact I have a aggregated attacking threat score that I calculate. He had the highest of the game of 10, and because he as I say, he provided that game-breaking assist. That for that reason, and just the volume of attacking activity, that's why I would have given him my man of the match. But if I went through it, I think Hatate was similar to Carter Vickers in that 80% of it, the stuff that he did was great, but there was just a few. There was a couple of really bad decisions in the final third. He butchered some great positions and a bit of giving the ball away as well. But he also did some terrific through balls, some great passes, great pockets of space that he picked up. Engels was terrific as well. Alistair Johnson was terrific. Maeda was terrific. Off the ball. I mean, that Blackman on the right wing. We talked about him before the game. He was a real threat. As was their, I think, Bageshian, the winger, and Maeda just matched him stride for stride.
Bottled him up.
He was terrific, and he drove the other way, scored a great goal as well. That was an amazing move between Kyogo, Hatate's fantastic last minute pass, and Maeda's timing, because it was just a toenail onside, and finish was fantastic. So all of those players, I would say, I would pick out. But like you say, there was nobody that was really bad. I mean, in fact, the quietest performance was probably Callum McGregor.
Yep. Yeah, and that he we didn't need him, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, there was
fine. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, he was just fine. Sitting in that role, and I mean, he was getting forward some, but I mean, there was so much available to other people that I think it was smart for him to assume the role that he did. The one, and I agree with everything you said. I mean, Kuhn, I thought, was a standout. My lingering issue with him remains one of decision making at times. I think he's so gifted physically. That's why he gets so much volume of things, and then he's one of these guys. To a lesser degree, like Palma, where it's like he gets into such good positions, and then like maybe 50% of the time, it's like he has a brain fart. So I think that's still an area for development for him. But yeah, I mean, he's so gifted. And to see him go down the right side, I thought was terrific.
So just on last thing on Kuhn, and I'll need to write about this probably. The unexpected thing about Kuhn is his defensive actions. He's actually pretty active defensively, and he won a couple of tackles. He tackled back a few times. As I say, he's not as intelligent in the press as, for example, an Engels or an O'Reilly, or a Maeda, in that if you look at the proportion of regains for the volume of pressing, he's kind of inefficient. But his defensive actions, he gets involved. Like, for example, Maeda had 12 defensive actions in the game. Kuhn had 10. And they were both 50-50 win-loss, which for a winger, that's pretty good. That is pretty good.
And the anecdotal thing where you see him tracking back, where it's an effort play. I mean, it's not a play that everyone makes, especially in a night like yesterday with the game and the intensity and the adrenaline. I mean, it's only natural that people need to pause to take their breath, so to speak. And I mean, there was just none of that. I mean, he's and I think that's a testament to the manager and the coaching staff. I mean, it seems like everyone's rowing in the same direction.
Yeah,
It seems like a
absolutely.
very much a team. There's no I in team type of mentality. So when you get guys like Kuhn, who's probably not their natural strength, that are going balls to the wall effort wise in the facets of play that probably aren't what they're known for, or maybe even enjoy at times. They're all pitching in that way, which I think is great. The only one that you didn't mention that I thought kind of gets honorable mention is Greg Taylor, and I
Sure.
think that's I think because he's gotten so good in that inverted role, and making some of those runs where you just assume it's a midfielder, where he's getting beyond the midfielders, even like he's getting up there with Kyogo, and interplaying with the forwards in well into the attacking space. And again, we'll see how it gets stress tested, but even him doing overloads on the right, and again, I think that's the kind of thing where McGregor sees that and he's dropping in to allow that to happen,
Yes, if that's fair.
and to
That's
make
fair.
to make it responsible. But I just thought his movement and the way he's playing that role, it was another example of why Slovan were completely overwhelmed, is that they had no plan for dealing with him and the movement that he was involved in. So the number of times he was in space and was part of a dangerous chance getting created, I thought was really excellent. And to your point, I think fortunately, kind of our defensive left, because of the issues they were having on the ball and being completely overwhelmed with our press and counter press, is we didn't get stress tested that much in transition. It was just those kind of couple instances, until it got a little more chaotic. We get into this other team,
Yeah.
and that's why we ended up giving them an ass whooping, as they had to get more
Yeah.
chaotic to
Like
score.
you said, their number 10, Tolic, I think the Croatian lad. I mean, he looked super talented on the ball. But when I'm collecting data, obviously it's a challenge when we're playing someone like Slovan Bratislava, because I don't know any of their players. I don't know what they look like. I don't know what color hair they've got. All that. So and the numbers weren't dead clear. So I'm struggling
Yeah.
to
And they had
work
a lot
out.
of 6'1" to 6'2" guys running around. Yeah.
Exactly. They all look kind of similar, a lot of them. So, but Tolic was the one. He's just like, he had zero, positional discipline. I couldn't, he was just all over the place. He was, sometimes he'd pop up wide right, sometimes he'd pop up left, centre in front of the centre backs, etc. And that seemed to be a huge problem for them, in that he just wasn't giving that shape, that disciplined shape off the ball. And super when he got the ball, he loves rolling the ball over his foot. He loves a quick feint and change of direction. He was terrific in that regard. Great five-a-side
Yep.
player, but in terms of that, off ball discipline. The funny thing was, funny to me when I'm trying to collect the data, is that the number of times I mistook Greg Taylor for Hatate. I thought, oh, Hatate's got a ball in the great. So, oh, it's Greg Taylor, because it's like
Right.
two little guys with dark hair, right? I'm just like, oh, it's actually Greg Taylor.
Yep.
That's indicative of what you're saying, of how he just has got this gift for popping up in great little pockets of space.
Yep. Well, with that, anything else to kind of summarize the game before we get to the segment with John and previewing Falkirk?
No, I've got to do this week's quote. And then, listen, I can't be as highbrow as Yates. This is actually Dr. Zeus, could you believe?
Oh, well, I'm a huge Dr. Zeus fan.
So just my summary of this game and where we are is sometimes you will never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. Meaning, we won't know how significant this win was, and did we do great, until we probably stress test it in Dortmund and Atalanta. But you will always have that memory, whatever happens. We'll always have Slovan at home.
Bravo. Well, let's move on then to John, and I think everyone's going to enjoy this segment. It's about a half hour, so previewing the weekend's game.
So for this section of the pod, we're delighted to have John McInally along, who's a Falkirk supporter. And rather than me rattle on, John, would you like to introduce yourself and where can people find your work?
Thanks, Alan. I am the producer and presenter of a podcast called Falkirk Daft, which has been going for the last couple of seasons. We just felt there was no Falkirk fan media until we started our podcast. So yeah, we've been doing it for the last couple of seasons. We've got a really good following now on the podcast, and we're a weekly podcast that just previews games. So we've actually done our preview for the Celtic game, so it's going to be nice seeing it from the other side. We spoke to well-known Celtic supporter Chris Toll and one of my good friends, Craig McCaffrey, just about the game. And I'm sure you guys are very scared about coming up against the Invincibles. So I'm here to just relay your fears a wee bit.
No, brilliant. So listen, League Cup, Celtic against Falkirk on Sunday. And as John mentioned there, that you used the word invincibles. Now, people, especially Celtic fans, may not be following the lower leagues of Scottish football quite as closely. As I was saying to John before we started, I do follow Falkirk. I was actually born there before I was old enough to be allowed to go through to Glasgow and see Celtic. My dad used to take me to Brockville for night games. Then I went with pals on a Saturday because I just loved football. So Falkirk have always, that's where I was born. So I do know a little bit about the team. But John, just if Falkirk have come from quite a dark place in terms of their history, recent history, but they're now in an exceptionally good place. Do you want to just give people a sense of that journey that you've been on especially the last couple of years?
It's been a dark journey, Alan. 5 years stuck down in League One, mainly due to a former Celtic hero, Paul Hartley, who took in charge of the side, basically thought, that's a great idea to get shot of the youth academy, and then relied on some terrible signings, put all the money they got and basically just gambled on bringing all these haddies up from down south who just didn't look like they'd ever kicked a ball. And that kind of set us on a downward spiral into League One. We've had a few changes of manager along the way. Ray McKinnon, Lee Mill and David McCracken, Paul Sheeran, Martin Rennie, until we finally cracked it a couple of seasons back when John McGlynn took charge. He took over a massive job. The club could have went to the wall last season. There was the threat of it being part-time if we didn't go up. First season, under McGlynn, we reached the semi-final, and you obviously played Inverness in the final that season. And then we reached the playoffs. We came up against Dunfermline side who went on and won the league. Obviously, sticks in the mouth as a Falkirk supporter, our bitter rivals going on to win the league. But we really fell down that season. But in fairness to John McGlynn, he said it would take 2 seasons to get the players in. It would take a couple of transfer windows, and he was true to his word. We won't talk about the Airdrie playoff game, but obviously last season was, an absolute historic season in the club's history. To go and see your side, and you guys have seen it as well, to see your team, go invincible over a season. It's unbelievable. You had the invincible treble. We didn't quite go that far, but to go that full season unbeaten, and basically it was the last kick of the ball to get a draw against Alloa in the last game of the season that kept us invincible. It's been remarkable, and cantered the league, and now we're top of the championship. 5 wins out of 5 there. So we're now currently on 43 league games unbeaten. So I believe 44, which will be Wraith Rovers away, will equal Barcelona's record. We've still got a wee bit to catch you guys, because I think you're 64 or 65, something like that.
Yeah,
I think that's a Scottish record. But Barcelona's our next target. We passed Milan there at the weekend. So
fantastic.
It's been an incredible journey, and we talk in the podcast, like, would you have taken that desperation of 5 seasons in League One for last season? And it's a hard one to answer, but it was just so joyous last season that that winning the title. We actually won the title unbeknownst to a League One side. We won it without actually being on the pitch at the time, because Hamilton dropped points and we were playing the later kickoff. And then to add that moment, then to go and just have a party at Montrose and smash them 7-1, and have that moment of we've won the league, and then to go to that final game against Alloa to crown the Invincibles. It was an incredible season, and we're up in the Championship and we're doing well beyond our expectations. And it's basically down to the players and John McGlynn, and there seems to be a real unity at the club now. It seems it's the most together I've ever felt the club, from the back room to on the pitch to what's happening in the stands.
So I mean, it didn't look like McGlynn changed a lot in terms of personnel between last season and this. It's more the players that have come in to the team were already there last season. He's shuffled the pack a little bit, but not actually any new signings. So what do you attribute this unity, this success on the pitch to? What is it you think is the magic ingredients that have given this unbeaten run?
You said the word there, Alan, is unity. John McGlynn, as a football supporter, you want new toys, don't you? You want new signings. There's that clamour of seeing new players come into the club. But John McGlynn has been very astute. He basically has used the money or his transfer budget to sign up players who have done very well for us over the last couple of seasons and get them on longer deals. We brought in Dylan Tate, who we had on loan from Hibs, and we brought in Ethan Ross, who we had on loan from Raith Rovers, both who showed up really, really well. So they've come in, and we were needing a goalkeeper. So we went and got Jamie Snedden, who was freed from Partick Thistle. He's been injured for most of the season. And Michael McKenna, with Stephen McGinn retiring last season. I think John McGlynn, being a good Musselburgh boy, knows Michael very, very well. He was top scorer in the Championship a few seasons ago with Arbroath, and he's brought him in for experience. This is the first time he's actually been in full-time football for a long, long time, Michael McKenna, so he's been brought in as experience, but he's really not had his game time, just because you don't change that side. You don't change that one side unless you've got suspensions or injuries. So he struggled to get into the side as a result of that. But, it has, John McGlynn's talked about it. It's that team spirit. And I think there's a bit of hesitancy maybe to bring in new players so they don't upset the apple cart. If you have one bad apple in that dressing room, suddenly the dynamic shift as far as I'm led to believe, the camaraderie and the team spirit that's in that dressing room is one of the best he's seen. And certainly you can tell on the pitch it's one of the best we've seen at Falkirk.
So just for, again, because people may not have seen much of Falkirk, just explain how does he set the team up? What's their sort of style of play? What are the characteristics of the way they play? And how do they play when they play? Because I know they've played Hearts, Dundee United. They've had cup games in the last couple of years against teams in higher leagues. Has he changed his approach and how he set them up?
No, absolutely not. John McGlynn, before because obviously John McGlynn has the connection with Brendan Rodgers and Celtic, he did a lot of analysis for Brendan Rodgers, and I believe to this day there's still very much to chat quite a bit. I think Brendan maybe sent him a get well soon when he had his hip replacement just recently. But I think working under Brendan Rodgers completely changed John McGlynn's footballing philosophy. We were lucky enough to, there was a bit of argy-bargy at Raith with him, and we were lucky enough to be able to go out and get him in as manager. But John McGlynn will set up exactly like Celtic will set up on Sunday. I have no doubts in my mind. There will not be park the bus. There will not be 5 at the back. John McGlynn will set up with 4, 2 in front of the 4, 1 in the 10, right wing, left wing, and a 9 through the middle. That's how he will set up. That's how he will play. He will play out from the back. He will play, try and play into the feet or the head of Ross McKeever up front to feed out to Calvin Miller, and it's probably going to be Alfie Agyeman on the right-hand side on Sunday due to Callum Morrison's injury at the moment. It will be I would be shocked. I'd be absolutely shocked if it's anything other than the 4-2-1-3 that we go with, because that's the only way he plays, and it's very much the case. And I think in his first season, there was a bit of a complaint about we tried putting a diamond into midfield and things like that, and it didn't seem to work. So John McGlynn's kind of went, well, if plan A is plan A, and if it doesn't work, we've just got to do it better, because there doesn't appear to be a plan B. I've never seen him kind of shift from that philosophy, apart from a few times where he tried to experiment with a diamond in midfield, which didn't really work to accommodate a couple of players. But that will be, I would suspect, how we'll set up against Celtic. It might be to our detriment, but if you're going to go out swinging.
Well, if I could jump in, my question starts with, well, let me first make a statement. Is I do follow the lower leagues kind of casually, and particularly when teams are succeeding and they kind of pop up. One of my hobbies, and John, I don't know if you're familiar with our brand as Spreadsheet Shaggers, but we're the data and analytics focused nerds, and so that's the lens through which I look at the lower leagues. And last season, I think it was around the winter break, or it wouldn't have been the winter break for the lower leagues, but around the festive period, Graham Spears had the manager on for Wraith Rovers when they were on their run in the championship, and I looked at their profile data wise. I was like, oh boy, this isn't going to last, because they were kind of outperforming their underlying metrics. When I take a look at Falkirk, that is distinctly not the case. Falkirk is really performing with very good support underlying metrics, meaning that it seems like it's likely to be durable. Average chance quality is really good, that kind of thing. So just wanted to make that declaration. And with that, one of the things I noticed in looking at the data profile, and I'll admit I've only watched the game against Hearts. In the U.S., that's the only game I've gotten on TV. And did happen to watch it, but Falkirk seemed to be very right-sided so far this season. Has that in their attack? I mean, that's where they tend to cross the ball from. Is that something because Celtic is infamously left-sided through the years in recent history. So is that something that's kind of well known within the support? Is there kind of an explanation as to why things tend to go down the right side? Is the data full of crap and I made this up? Wondering your thoughts on that.
It won't be. I don't know how up to date the data is that you have there, but our best player, Cal Morrison, plays down the right. So, and he was our top goal scorer the last 3 or 4 seasons. Cal's been our top goal scorer. So it tends to go down the right. Calvin Miller switched over to the right. So Calvin Miller, you guys might be familiar with, obviously, with his career at Celtic as well. Yeah. He switched over to the right because Calvin was injured and we brought in Ethan Ross on the left. So again, I think there's a tendency to go down to right because Calvin was probably one of our stronger players. That might be slightly different come Sunday because I think what he might do, Alfie Agyeman, who we signed from Kelty at the start of last season, he's played down the right the last couple of games against Dennismuir and Airdrie, and I definitely think he'll start. I cannot wait to see Alfie Agyeman. I'm guessing I'll be your boy Alex Val from Barcelona that's going to play on the left hand side. He will not know what has hit this at him when he faces Alfie Agyeman. Alfie doesn't know what he's doing. The player won't know what he's doing. He's just an absolute enigma player and a player that you love to watch as a football fan. But I think there'll be a tendency to more go out to the left with Calvin because Alfie's an absolute, we call him Captain Chaos on the podcast because you just don't know what he's going to do. His game's remarkably improved, but you'll see what I mean when it gets to Sunday if Alfie's playing down that right-hand side. But I think there will be a tendency to look for Calvin on the left hand. His delivery's excellent. And I think, with the history there, he'll be out with a point to prove come Sunday. So I think, Gary Oliver, who's likely to play the 10, will be looking out to the left rather than the right. But if we want absolute chaos and just crazy things happening, we'll play Alfie in because he will bring absolute chaos come Sunday. I'm very much looking forward to it. I would love to see your stats though. I please send me them after because that sounds fascinating. That's kind of stuff I'd love to see.
I mean, is it fair to say that what is even perhaps more remarkable about Falkirk's start to this season is that if you look at the last couple of seasons, you mentioned Cal Morrison there, tremendous volume of goals and assists from wide right. Aidan Nesbitt often played the 10 position and similarly highly productive in terms of numbers, and Miller on the left. But you've achieved that top of the championship, and as James has said, It's not like you're scraping through games, or as much as I can see from the data, you've been dominating games and winning games comfortably. In fact, I think the only game you've lost all season is Ayr United in the League Cup, and I think you outshot them like 20 shots to 5. Something ridiculous like that. So the real deal. But you've done it without arguably your two most productive attackers, Nesbitt and Morrison, being available for much of the season. Is that fair, or do you think
it is fair? I mean, it's been a shame. I'm not sure if Aidan Nesbitt will make this weekend. We heard that he might have been back for Airdrie's Dennismuir, but he's yet to appear on the bench. So I don't think he'll come straight back into the side. Though if he is fit and ready to play, Aidan is a player that John McGlynn loves, and I'm guessing with, again, the history there, it's a game he would thrive in. Key to Falkirk's successes are number 9, a player called Ross McKeever. Now, we brought in Ross from Alloa. He'd worked with John McGlynn and kept tabs on him. He recently played for Thistle, and he ended up in Alloa, and he was working as an Amazon driver. And he is absolute key to everything we do at Falkirk. If Ross McKeever was to get injured, it would be an absolute nightmare because we've got no one obvious to replace him. Ross is a player who chips in with goals, but where he is important in Falkirk's play is feeding out to the wings. It's hold-up play. For a guy who, I mean, I've met Ross I'm taller than him, but you would not think it. The way he leaps and hangs in the air and gets flick-ons is ridiculous. We have a joke in the podcast. We call him Ross Giroux because he's a wee bit like Olivier Giroux in the way he plays. And no, I'm not saying he's as good as Olivier Giroux, but just in comparison with the style he plays with, the way he carries himself on the pitch, he'll win his fair share of headers against. It'll be interesting to see who plays, obviously, from Celtic. That's what I guess Falkirk supporters are interested. Well, after the European match during the week, will players be rested? But then if you rest players, you've got a £9 million striker to bring on. You've got this guy from Barcelona to bring in. So it doesn't matter who you play. You're obviously going to be superior in pretty much every department. But yeah, Ross is really an really important player because he did come with fanfare. Everyone, I was speaking to a couple of Alloa supporters who do the Wasp's Nest podcast. And they were saying, I said, what do you think? Because looking, as all footballers do, at Wikipedia stats or transfer market stats, his goal return wasn't great. And the Alloa guy said, we aren't fussed about losing him. And then we're like, oh God, he's coming to us. And, he's been unbelievable. He's been unbelievable and is absolutely key to the way Falkirk plays. So I'm looking forward to see how he does on the big stage. Obviously, fared well against Hearts, fared well against Dundee United, as has the team, and Dundee United we've seen went on to have a really good season. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to just seeing how we match up against you guys come Sunday.
So I think what I'd emphasise to listeners is how refreshing it's going to be on Sunday to see a team come to Celtic Park and play football. And play good attacking possession football as well. We've just had Hearts visit in the last game. Hearts should be easily the third best team in the country if they had a decent manager. They got the talent in the squad, and they played classic, hoofball, low block, hoofball, free kicks, throw-ins, corners. Everything gets launched into the box. And to be honest, most Premier League teams play that. So this is going to be such a refreshing change because am I right in saying you in that 4-2-3-1, your two ostensibly holding midfield players, Spencer and Tate, are really they're footballers. They're not classic holding midfielders. I mean, Spencer's got a bit of a tackle in him, but they're actually footballers. They're really nice. Spencer's got a great range of passing, actually, hasn't he? And Tate's a really silky player. So the Falkirk have got a front six. Essentially, they're all footballers. Is that fair to say?
No, it is very much fair to say. They're not in the mould of, say, a Canty or a Neil Lennon or that kind of holding midfield. They're more like quarterbacks, Tate and Spencer. One goes, one stays. Generally what happens, and one quarterbacks, the person that stays quarterbacks it, and he'll be looking for balls in in the back. You'll be looking for balls through in the middle. And on top of that are two centre-halves, Liam Henderson and Cole Donaldson, are big ball-playing centre-halves. Now, they're big guys. They'll win their aerial battles. They should do. I'll be interested to see how they do against, if he does, it's going to be the 9 come Sunday. But Cole and Liam don't know anything. I mean, like, they're ball playing and they chip in with goals as well. Cole Donaldson last season scored 2 of the best goals we scored all season. We're just striding out of defence and hitting a strike. Check out his goal against Alloa, by the way, if you haven't. It's unbelievable. I'd say the boot pings in off the post from about 20 yards. Unbelievable. But Cole and Liam are big 2 centre halves who like to play with the ball as well. And the first thing they'll do is look for Spencer or Tate, and whoever's sitting and the other one's gone, they'll look for them, and then they effectively dictate the play, and like a quarterback would, So they are pretty good, box to box midfielders. It's old fashioned box to box midfielders. They are very good ball players and very good passers of the ball.
So James, James, go on. Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask. So, I mean, it sounds like, and it's certainly reflected in the data the last couple of seasons, that the attacking side of the team has been very productive. But what's noticeable this season so far, and again, it's limited. It's not a ton of games, but is the ability to just completely dominate the opposition and suppressing chance creation. Relative to, it sounds like going to be a more possession centric. That's reflected in the data. High quality chances being created, but what do you ascribe then? Is it the system? Does it seem like the coaching, the cohesion in defense? As far as, is it high press? Is it more of a mid block where maybe step back a little bit and then coordinated triggers for pressing, that kind of thing? How do you perceive why they're defending so well?
Out of possession, I would say it is more, rather than a really high press, it's more of a kind of mid block and sending the guys up and attacking at once. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, you talk about chance suppression. I don't think that it'll be hard suppressing chances come Sunday, but it is the thing is that we get a lot of the ball. Teams sit off us. It's really interesting to see how teams come up against us now, because we generally dominate possession and we create a lot of chances. That's because we trying as many times as possible to get the ball into the box and look for those second balls off of Ross McKeever, or if one of our wingers goes, the other one pulls in at the back post, and we've had a lot of joy from that as well. I would say it's more of a mid block and we cut down. The fullbacks don't tend to, they overlap now and again, but they tend to sit a bit kind of halfway line. One might go, but it generally comes through, like, go back into the middle and look for our 10, who's probably going to be Gary Oliver come Sunday as well. And then those guys are always looking to feed to the wings and get the balls into the box. So that probably, where a fullback's sitting like that probably stops a lot of chances coming from their areas.
So I mean I suppose I think it'll make for a good spectacle. Probably the bad news, John, for you is that that's exactly how we hope teams come to Celtic Park and try and play. Generally,
it may be to a detriment. I was at Celtic Park for a League Cup game where John Hughes was in charge, and we went to try and play against us, and we got gubbed 8-1. So that was a fun night to be a Falkirk supporter. But then again, I was there when we won on penalties as well at Celtic Park.
I've had some good wins. I don't think it'll be that. I think there's too much quality in Falkirk's team. But James, John set the question up there, is that off the back of a game in Europe, how will Rodgers approach this? I'd be astonished if there weren't some changes. But I think Rodgers missed out on a treble last year. He wants a treble. He doesn't want to be losing at home to Falkirk in the League Cup. So there's going to be a strong side, and it deserves to be. It needs to be a strong side, because this team I would vouch are probably better than most of the bottom half of the Premier League at this point in time. So what do you think the changes might look like on the Celtic side?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm not a fan. I think at this point, again, if we're going to be uh, ascend to the stature to which we aspire and should be in Europe, you know, worrying that much about a cup competition that most countries have gotten rid of, to go after how many more trebles do we need to get until, you know what I mean? It's almost like, and so, people talk about pathways for youth, and we have these younger players. I mean, guys like Oldenholm, Sinisalo, I mean, these guys need to play. And if they're not going to play on Saturday, when the hell are they, or Sunday, when the hell are they going to play? So, and if they weren't, then, they should have been shipped out on loan, that kind of thing. So but I agree with you. I suspect that it'll be more along the edges. I would guess probably Ralston, maybe Vale at left back. I would think he'll retain Carter Vickers would be my guess, and then maybe swap in Trusty. But to John's point, some of the rotation, that's going to be a £6 million center back that comes in, and Ida maybe at striker. So it's not, Palma probably at left wing, maybe, those kind of rotations that you'll get. But yeah, I would think 3 or 4 would be my guess. And in those specific ones I mentioned is the most likely. Cal McGregor should not play this game. I mean, that put Oldenholm in that position and see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it'll depend. We're obviously recording this on Wednesday ahead of the Champions League game, but it depends, I guess, who plays in the midfield in that Champions League. There's talk of maybe Hatate being dropped for that game, Bernardo maybe playing. So I guess one of those, whoever starts on the bench for Celtic, will play on Sunday, whether it is Bernardo or Hatate. And I wouldn't see why you would risk Cal McGregor. The guy has played an awful lot of football, so I wouldn't see why you would want to put him in a game like this. So, but yeah, if I think you're right as well, James. The goalkeeper's certainly a position you would change. Though I would love to see it's the Kasper Schmeichel derby, of course.
Yes.
Coming up against his former team. I'm sure he's right up for it. Try to get one over on the Bairns. But I would suspect there'll be a goal. You would give Sinisalo a run out, I would imagine, because he's not had his debut for Celtic yet, if I'm right in saying that.
That's right. Yeah.
And I guess if Kyogo plays tonight, it'll be Ida up top. So just that 9.5 million striker to deal with as well. So yeah, it's worrying. It's worrying, but yes, it'll be a laugh.
So listen, I mean, in all seriousness, though, where I mean, I don't know how much you've watched Celtic, but where do you see Falkirk having a chance of hurting Celtic? Whatever team that Rodgers puts out.
I think in the full back areas is where Falkirk have got the best chance of getting any change. I think Alfie Ackerman, as I've said, if he's come up against or more than likely probably the Alex Val.
Valle
from Barcelona. I literally don't think Celtic supporters will realise what's going on when Alfie Ackerman comes at you. He's a big, strong, powerful unit who runs, and his ability with the ball and its feet is incredible. So yeah, Alfie going up against either of the left back, and I think Calvin Miller, as I alluded to earlier on, I think him on the left hand side, if he is going up against Ralston, I would suspect their paths would have crossed.
I think so. Yeah,
at that level as well. Yeah. I think he'll fancy his chances, and I think he goes back to Celtic with a point to prove. He did get a couple of minutes at Celtic in the first team, but I think going out there is obviously a die-hard Celtic supporter. All his family are Celtic supporters. I think he'll want to go out with a point to prove, and I'm really looking forward to that duo on the left-hand side. If it is Ralston or Johnston that are playing, I suspect, like James says, it will be Ralston that'll be out there.
Got you. And one of James's favourite topics is goalkeepers. So Nicky Hogarth, I suspect, will play in goal. What's his strengths and weaknesses?
Well, I mean, Nicky's a young goalkeeper. He's the son of Miles Hogarth, former Hearts and Falkirk goalkeeper, and brother of Jay Hogarth, who's on the books at Rangers. We got him from Nottingham Forest. He was on loan for us, and then Forest ended up freeing him, and we were lucky enough to pick up his contract. But Nicky, big tall boy, we had a really strange situation last season where we brought in a keeper from Lincoln, under 21 international by the name of Sam Long, and there was this weird situation for, it was a month on, month off. I think Lincoln were threatening to bring Sam back, and then come the winter break, we said, right, well, this will be the deal. It'll be 1 month on, 1 month off, and it went that way. So I kind of upset, because you want the goalkeeper to, I think you want a number one, and you want a definitive number one. So it kind of upset the apple cart a wee bit. So it was back and forth. I think he's number one now, though, and he's come up with some big saves, as young goalkeepers do. He's got the odd mistake in him. Airdrie, at the weekend there, he kicked the ball out when we were dominating, and it felt like one of those games where, even though you've hit the bar, you've hit the post 4 times, you've had 2 off the line, it's just felt like one of those games where one chance Airdrie get, they're going to score from it. And I thought that was going to be the one chance where he passed out to an Airdrie player, but he made up with it with a brilliant save. Big, tall, strong goalkeeper, not scared to come off his line and gather the ball as well, which is great to see in a young goalkeeper. Good shot stopper. So yeah, he's a work in progress, Nicky, but he's certainly shown that, as the number one at Falkirk this season, that he's got it, and I think hopefully will go on to make us a bit of money. Another player I haven't actually mentioned is a player who's come from nowhere this season, a player we signed in the winter break last season called Keelan Adams from Cumbernauld Colts. Now Keelan, we went straight back to Cumbernauld Colts, and he's come in this season and was played pre-season and looked great. Now Finn Yeats, who is another young player we have, who we got, who's playing right back and is, was pretty much ever present during the Invincible season. He's displaced Finn at right back. Now Keelan is set up 3 goals already this season, 3 assists for him, and he's about 6'1", 6'2", big right back who's come from low in league football and does not look out of place. Absolutely, he's going to make us a lot of money at the age he's at, and he's a big, strong, powerful runner, likes to get forward with the ball, and as I say, he's 3 assists at this level already this season. He's certainly one that is one for the future, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on to bigger things come the end of the season.
Excellent. So, James, anything else from yourself for John?
No, it's just been tremendous. Really appreciate it, John.
John, anything for us? Any questions you've got about Celtic or who we're going to play?
Big question. Will you let us win on Sunday? Come on, it'll be a laugh. You don't need another. Like you're saying, James is saying earlier on, you don't need another treble. You've got plenty of trebles. Brendan's got the treble. He doesn't need another treble. Just let us have a wee moment at at Hampden come the quarterfinals. We'll beat Rangers for you. All will be good. No. All right.
So listen, John, thanks ever so much. If you remind people again where they can find you, where you can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, if you want to hear the Falkirk side of things from a Celtic perspective, you can get us Falkirk Daft on wherever you get your podcasts. I love that phrase. We're on YouTube as well, Falkirk Daft, and just follow Falkirk Daft on social media for our Falkirk-based banter.
Excellent. So listen, I have every confidence that we will be speaking to you next season as we preview a league game.
I truly hope so, Alan. I truly hope so.
And listen, I'm sure whatever happens, I think it's going to be a terrific game of football on Sunday. It's going to be very entertaining for sure. So I hope everyone can get along to that. And thanks very much for your time, John.
No problem.
All right, welcome back. We are here to kind of bookend the conversation with John as we look forward to the Falkirk game. And so we talked about it a little bit with John, but we recorded that preceding the Champions League game, as was made clear in the recording. So any updated thoughts on selection issues and what you might like to see, Alan, as far as rotation and
yeah. Listen, I hope people know us. So, we tend to try and see the worst in things and the risks and all that. That's our kind of MO, right? I mean, listen, embrace it. It's what we do. Okay?
That's right.
But not to say that we should be terrified of this game this weekend, but this is a good. This is a team. Whatever you might think of the players that play for them, if you've got a really well coached team and all the players have bought into it and they play a particular style of play that they execute really well, and they've already beaten the likes of Dundee United and Hearts comfortably this season. This isn't going to be like a walk in the park. Having said all that, your point, James, about listen, if we cannot play some of the guys, backup guys in this game, then when? I agree with that as well. But I just think Rodgers wants to win this. Obviously, I don't think we're going to make 11 changes, but I can't see how we wouldn't change the whole back five. In that you're bound to play Sinisalo. What is the point of having a young player shadowing Schmeichel if you're not going to play him in a game like this? So you're going to put him in. Johnson went off with a back problem. And given his recent hamstring issues, I don't know if they're related, but it could be. They could be all related. It's all in the same sort of area. So, probably wise to give him a rest. And are we really concerned if Tony Ralston comes in? Carter Vickers went off. And like I said earlier, the errors that he made, the uncertainty in certain aspects of his game the other night, last night, it all speaks to me of a very un-Carter Vickers-like performance. So if he's carrying an illness or a knock or something, probably best to give him the day off. Again, why wouldn't you bring your £6 million centre-half in and give Scales a well-earned rest? And similarly, why wouldn't you bring in this kid you've got from Barcelona and give Greg Taylor a rest? So I could see the case for a whole new back five. And then if you do that, are you going to change the rest of the team? I don't see who plays instead of McGregor. I honestly don't. Right?
I think you're right.
And then he'll play Bernardo because Bernardo was just a sub. So Bernardo and McGregor, I think, will play. And then probably I would hazard a guess that McCowan will play as the third midfielder. Yeah. And then on the wings, Kuhn got taken off. Now, I think we've got a real issue at wing. It's James Forrest, fantastic assist, but I think we'll find that when we're playing Dortmund and Atlanta, bringing James Forrest on isn't going to change the game positively for Celtic like he would have done 5-6 years ago. Unfortunately, I don't want to sort of. I'm not being critical. It's just the reality of a 33-year-old winger just doesn't have. We know the issues with Palmer, so I think Celtic have still got a lot of depth issues on the wide areas. I think with Maeda and Kuhn, we've got a frighteningly good pressing machine, and we've got a frighteningly good counter-attacking machine. And if they will take chances if you give it to them. But I think beyond that, it's tricky. I think Maeda, he played the full night. He led all the pressing stats. I would have thought that Palmer would come in, but I think Kuhn will start. And then basically, I think obviously Ida, he probably needs 90 minutes in his legs. He's got a goal, fantastically taken goal. Really pleased to see him up and running on that regard. So I think that'll be the team. I think it'll be Sinisalo, I think Ralston, probably Welsh, Trusty, Valle, McGregor, Bernardo, McCowan, and then Kuhn, Ida, and Palmer. That's my best guess. But Rodgers, but it wouldn't surprise me, given we don't have a game for another week, like when we play St. John's. It wouldn't surprise me if he only makes one or two changes.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if he does a full back five. That would surprise me. The fullbacks, I agree. Even Carter Vickers, if he's carrying something, which I think is a reasonable speculation. But I'd be surprised if he takes both center backs out. It's just, I don't know, with the rest of and Johnson. We talked about this on Tuesday. I'm sorry, with John is that Johnston with the hamstring issue, and now I didn't even know that he has a back issue on top of it.
Well, that's why he went off. He went off with complaining about whether it was a knock or a pull. I don't know. But again, I'm nervous about these sort of injuries.
As a fat middle-aged guy with a sciatica issue, I can tell you that hamstrings and lower back pain can be correlated, if not causation. But so I'll be. Let me just put it that way. I'll be surprised if it's both center backs. And I thought it was interesting that Trusty went in as the right center back. He's right-footed. That would be not an unusual or abnormal thing. I think he's right-footed, or is he left-footed? I just called myself
I
out
think
there.
he's left-footed. I think he's
Oh,
a
he is
left-footed.
left-footed. Okay, well,
yeah.
there I go. Dumbass. Well, then that would be interesting then if he were to go in on the right. But yeah, some other rotation. Kyogo, I would think. I mean, this is a game Ida's got to play. You would think, just from a minutes perspective. But to me, the one that's obvious. I mean, if Sinisalo doesn't play, I don't. Why would any promising young keeper ever go to a Celtic again if you're not at least going to get League Cup games? I mean, against Falkirk, for God's sakes, it's not the final. Like I'm of the opinion I'd like to see guys get committed to. Like I like that idea of a cup keeper, where they where they have the sense of ownership of that tournament. But I could be, I would be, charitable in a manager making a switch into a semifinal or a final if it gets that far. But yeah, otherwise, I generally agree with you. I mean, McCowan's a good shout. I think he'd be an obvious one to come in and would suit the game. But yeah, McGregor. I mean, who else is gonna? They haven't been playing anyone in that 6 role other than him, really. So who would it be? I'd be surprised.
Well, Odin Holm doesn't seem to be in favor, does he? So
no. So yeah, I don't know who it would be. Well, any other last thoughts before we wrap it up for the week?
No, listen, it's shaping up to be. This could be a classic season. So not getting carried away. These Champions League games are going to be so difficult to call, and add in the variance that goes against you, seems to go against you when you play good sides. The luck seems to follow the money, unfortunately. But listen, we got just got to enjoy it. I'm just going to enjoy yesterday for the next few days. But listen, Sunday will be a really good game of football. It really will. I hope people who can get along there, make it a big crowd, because it will be a cracking game of football.
Well, everyone enjoy. Once again, hopefully, if he's back from his surgery and we get his technology situation repaired, we'll get Martin back with us next Thursday, and we'll be back for a review of the Falkirk game on Tuesday with Laura. So everyone, enjoy your weekend and enjoy the game.